everyone, welcome to another Underrated Film Saturday, and today I'm going to be talking about a film that hasn't gotten a lot of praise from critics. I would say it's probably gotten really bad reviews among them. For some reason, I don't know why they think this film is so horrible, when I really personally don't think it's as horrible at all. I From what I could tell, it seemed like that they didn't like the fact that it was sometimes a little bit over dramatic, or and they maybe there were just certain parts of the script that they didn't really particularly care for. But to be honest, I think this one is actually a really interesting story and has some interesting things to say as far as um, sort of this sort of the I guess the concept of rebellion and of the time period at least that it takes place. And that film is Swing Kids. Now, again, I understand if all of the criticism from the critics, they want to pounce on it however long. However, it seemed to be that the audience seemed to view this film more favorably, actually. So I think there is some reasoning behind people enjoying this film and at least finding some value behind it. Um, and I think the reason why this film got pushed under the bus is because of the criticism that it got from the critics. I believe even uh, Mr. Ebert didn't particularly care for this film, actually, and I think he considered it one of his worst, which I really don't really know why. And I mean, from what the criticism I've read, it just doesn't seem like really all too valid criticism to me. But whatever. One man's trash, another man's treasure, as they say. Um, Now, this film in particular follows a group of kids pre-World War II in pre-World War II Germany. This is basically the time when the Nazis are pretty much taking over Germany and kind of really changing the culture, really changing the environment in which the people within Germany live in. And in doing so, sort of taking away freedom and imposing their authoritarian view onto everyone, and basically going after, in particular, the younger generation and trying to brainwash them, really. So it really does hone in onto that whole era where there were these things going on that were allowing for this particular society within Germany to change. And basically what happens is these kids, who are basically like a group of friends, they end up having to sort of be forced into being in the Hitler Youth, as they call it. So you have to kind of wear the Nazi symbol, and you have to at least I think there was sort of some training and teaching involved as well, like basically just kind of like indoctrination, basically, is what they were basically doing to these kids during the time, and it focuses on those kids that were sort of growing up within these changes. And what commonality that all of these kids have is that they're really into swing music, in particular swing dancing as well. And unfortunately, swing dance was considered a big no-no by the Nazis. And I think it's definitely safe to say why that was, because swing dance has a significant influence within the United States. It's kind of considered very, it's considered a form of dance that's very culturally freedom-esque oriented. It's very it's very untraditional, I guess you could say. At least during the time period, it was very untraditional. And basically, they sort of end up partaking in swing dance secretly, and so they just kind of go into these, I guess, old school type clubs, I guess you would call them, and basically partake in swing dancing and just listen to swing music, and do those kinds of things things that were considered to be I guess you could say, illegal by the Nazis, and basically kind of in a form of rebellion. So these kids were basically fighting against the sort of ways in which the Nazis were, I guess, trying to indoctrinate them into being. Uh, so you'll end up seeing how this ultimately impacts the friendship among the friends in the swing group, and how it affects their families as well. And this film actually resolves itself very unconventionally as well, which is something that I actually enjoyed by it too, because usually these kinds of films, they sort of end on a somewhat similar note to where there is kind of a real kind of conclusion, but here it's kind of uh, vague almost, and in a sense kind of uh, shows you these sort of unfortunate circumstances of what can happen when people rebel in this way. And that's really the essence of this film, and it's quite interesting, and I think, you know, has a lot of interesting things to say. Now, is it perfect in the acting department? Is it perfect in the writing department? Is it perfect in every way, shape, or form and deserves to be a masterpiece? No, not at all. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form, but it's bringing up some really interesting ideas that were sort of prevalent and relevant during that time period. And even if it wasn't necessarily as historically accurate as maybe something uh, else that revolves around this time period, it still brings up these controversial ideas that, again, were part of the era, and, you know, really it was a sense of expression for these kids to, you know, feel liberated in a way, um, because of the tyranny that was sort of falling down upon them. But that's really the essence of the film. I think that's really ultimately all I can say about it without really giving too much away as to exactly what happens. But, you know, I just think that there's a lot of things with this film that do work, and I think the kids actually do stand out in quite a way. You kind of see who is who within the group, and I think that's ultimately all that really matters as well. And you sort of see too the relationships and how they are either put on under a strain, or they're they or how certain kids develop a closer bond with one another. But that's the film within a nutshell. Again, if you're open to the idea of having a film centered around kids that were growing up within this period within Germany, this will be, this will probably intrigue you a lot, and you can probably even forgive whatever bits and pieces the critics don't like about the writing or the story or the characters or whatnot. However, if you're gonna go in just trying to nitpick, then again, you're not gonna really enjoy this film, and you're not gonna take in the interesting things that it has to say, and you're just gonna sit there and complain. And I think that's really the essence, I would say, if you're going into a film like this. Um, and it's definitely safe to say that, you know, you sort of see too how some kids ultimately get brainwashed into believing in um, the Nazi propaganda. But that's the real focus of the film, and it really brings that to the center. And it's really, I think, quite interesting. And I don't know why the criticism is so high. Like, I understand some criticism, and I don't mind that being the focus, but it seems like that this one was really trashed um, for some reason across the board. And I honestly don't understand why, because there's a lot of films that focus on a lot of other things um, that again touch upon similar themes, but not in a way this film I think does. And so I think it would just be nice if more people knew about it, and I don't think it's as horrible as the critics make it out to be. This is a similar thing that I had with Apocalypto. For some reason, they just went crazy with it, thinking it was racist when I saw no clear evidence to suggest that it was racist. You know, it's just that I don't, and again, it's a different kind of criticism obviously here with this film, but it just seems to me that a lot of it is designed to be a little bit more so nitpicky and not nearly taking in the genuineness of what it's ultimately saying. But again, that's really all I can say though about this film. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.